I live in Minneapolis, right?
Nope.
And so I live in Minneapolis, and I live 10 minutes from George Floyd Square. And as I've mentioned, it wasn't the first time I've been involved in any Black Lives Matter events or protests. And so when this happened, like and that was, I think it was, I think it was killed on a Tuesday. Is that correct? But by Thursday, a friend contacted me and was like, "Hey, are you planning to go down to?" I mean, it wasn't called George Floyd Square then. It's what is it, 35th and Grand? I'm trying to remember the cross streets there where Cup Foods is. But I grew up 10 minutes from there too, about 15 blocks south of there, in a part of South Minneapolis. So like, this is not like unfamiliar territory to me. And man, I mean, the mood was so tense, and there were like, even from the highway, there were helicopters flying over the area, multiple helicopters flying over the area, and it was like within 3 blocks of the square, the people had just owned it. Like cars were just parked diagonally in the street. People were smoking blunts. Music was playing. People were coming and going. So there was like, it was a party atmosphere, but a very tense party atmosphere. It wasn't a happy party atmosphere. You know what I mean? It was like people like blowing
I
off
do.
steam.
Yeah, I've been in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Um, but there were a lot of people there, and so people were showing up already. And it was that night and Friday and Saturday night that really were quite heated. But during the day, every day we had there were marches, and so a couple of friends and we attended about, I guess, 3, 4, 5 marches in that 7 to 10 day period there at the beginning of the movement. Um, and one of them was that protest. I don't know if you recall where the semi truck drove through the crowd of protesters
I
on the
do
highway.
recall. Yep.
I was there, and I was one of the first people to see that truck because I was so cognizant already, like, of the danger that it posed. I mean, I've been supportive of kind of like the disruptive highway protests in the past over previous years, and so like I'm not like opposed to it as a tactic, but I think it's dangerous because I don't trust drivers, and I know that you know it was very clear by then that there was already a reactionary backlash to this racial movement, because when Jamar Clark was killed, I think it was Jamar Clark, there was an occupation at a different precinct, and a couple of white supremacists showed up and shot a couple of protesters. One person was shot in the stomach. I don't know if you remember hearing about that. They
I
were
do.
live streaming from the car with their guns, and in typical white supremacist fashion, one of them knew a cop and called the cop that night and turned himself in peacefully the next morning. I mean, just so stereotypical. So, yeah, it was. I was already. We're marching out onto the highway, and I'd been separated from my friends. This is like June, so I was like still extremely COVID cautious too. It was like the beginning of the pandemic. So we got separated because I didn't want to be in like the heart of the crowd, even though it was like 99.9% masked. Good on us. I was still, paranoid about that, and so I was waiting for them. So like thousands of people already marched on the one side of the highway, and then we started to fill the other side of the highway because it was getting too crowded. We're all up on the bridge, and by the time I got out there, I was like, "Wow, we're on a bridge, first of all, and there are high buildings around us. This is like a perfect place, and just like to start, you know, shooting at
Picking
people. They
people
have nowhere to
off.
run.
Yeah,
Huh?
picking people
And
off. Yeah.
yeah, just picking people off is so easy. And I'm feeling a little bit better because all the cars that are on the highway are parked, and they have the windows down, and they're honking, and they all seem supportive. So I'm like, okay, well, there's at least that. At least like none of these people in our immediate vicinity are like a risk to us. And initially, I'm like towards the front, sitting on the concrete, and then I'm like I don't know if I feel comfortable like sitting on a highway and you know being in the middle and like just being so exposed. So I moved myself to the side and stood on one of the pylons with the guardrail, right? And so I'm standing on it, and we're on a hill, looking down at oncoming traffic. There aren't any cars coming because there was like a four car blockade. So some drivers on the road had put together four cars in a row, only leaving the shoulder exposed to just prevent anyone from accidentally driving through. But sure enough, like 5 minutes after the leader of the protest had come up, gotten on the loudspeaker, and said, I've been in touch with the mayor and the governor, and they are on their way here to meet us and hear our demands. And minutes later, I hear like this menacing, roaring horn, air horn, right? And then I see that semi barreling up the hill at us, you know, and at the speed it was going at that distance, I thought there's no way that this truck is going to be able to stop in time. And it felt deliberate. You know what I mean? Like they were laying on their horn for 12 to 15 seconds before they reached us. So you could hear them and then you could see them. And I just, you know, jumped because I thought there was going to be a stampede. And I thought for sure there were going to be casualties too. So I jumped off the railing and ran down the side of the highway. And soon there were people behind me, and we were all trying to get over this fence. Eventually, we knocked it down. You know, it was not easy to get over. And behind me, I just heard this roar of screams as the semi went through the crowd. And I couldn't see. So I get over the fence and just feeling panicked, right? And wondering where my friends are. Presumably they're on the other side and safe, but you know, I still worry about the stampede. And you know, we get on the phone and decided to go, you know, meet back at our friend's condo who was, you know, living downtown at the time. And we ended up meeting up there, but the whole time, 20 minutes on the way back to the condo, walking there, we thought people died, you know, because you couldn't see back, and there was just mayhem on the highway after the fact. It was only later we found out that everyone was narrowly missed. One person came very close to getting run over, but like a friend of mine was like the one who handed that bike. Did you see the whole footage?
I saw the footage. Yeah.
Protesters climbing on the truck. Like my friend
Yeah.
is like hanging off
Yeah.
the truck with a bike lock, and he hands his bike
Yeah.
lock to the other guy, and he smashes the windshield,
Yeah.
he kicks
I
the
remember
windshield in.
that.
These
Yeah.
guys were like so brave. And I really felt, I was like, wow, they tried to have like a Reginald Denny moment. You know what I mean? Like I like my conspiratorial brain was like, that's like awfully weird. Like that highway was closed, and you know, I have raw footage from the transit authority that released all of their security camera footage from the highways that show the driver was seeing other cars on the road on the highway going the same way as him, stopping on the shoulder and going up the on ramp the wrong direction for more than a quarter mile before the blockade. He swerves around the blockade and goes, you know, accelerates up towards the protesters. It was a totally deliberate act. You know, if he wasn't trying to kill anyone, he was definitely trying to scare people, which is what he admitted to doing, but he could just as easily, you know, kill people that way. And, you know, he had no load. That was his last. He was on his way home. So he could have stopped much, much sooner than he did. Um, but, you know, once again, the narrative was still the protesters beat him up, and it was totally an accident, and it was their fault for being on the highway in the first place.
Yeah.
And
That was the initial story that I saw.
here's why I'm conspiratorial about it, because uh, the mayor Jacob Frey had just come out and basically chided the police in the news. Do you remember that?
Can you remind me about that?
He had a press conference. He was very, you know, forceful about going to find justice, going to bring this officer to justice, that kind of thing. You're not going to have this kind of behavior. But, you know, they smack you back pretty quickly. And I think, to some degree, like my suspicion is like as I was walking back, like I wanted to be off. I was walking through parking lots, and there was a white truck with a guy on a CB radio, and he had fire stickers. A lot of fire people had come into the state from surrounding states, and he was parked perpendicularly to the parking spot in an empty lot. He was sitting there, kind of overlooking the highway and the bridge. Um, and so it wouldn't surprise me if uh, a sympathy, because like this the driver of the semi truck was a Trump supporter. Wouldn't surprise me if there was a coordinated effort to undermine a PR event for the governor and the mayor with the protesters to make them look good. You know, so
You really think that you think that's possible, eh?
yeah, I do.
That's
I mean,
sick if it's true. that would
I
be
know. I mean, it's
that would be
complete
absolutely
speculation.
ridiculous. That would be
Complete
insane.
speculation. But like any truckers on the road, do you mind switching to this channel and you have
I mean, it's totally possible. It's just like
we'd
if
like
that
to
ends
do,
up if that ends
we're
up being the
holding this
truth.
rally on the highway. We'd like to disrupt it. The mayor's trying to get a win, and fuck. I mean, look at the way that like the police union in New York City holds press conferences. You know what I mean? They're like incels on 4chan. You know what I mean? Like they're just like so abrasive and obnoxious that it just does not. I would not put it past the
Oh, me either. No, me either. I mean, it's the fact that it is possible is what's disturbing as well. Yeah.
right, right, right. Like I mean, we know that the leader of our police union at the time was Bob Kroll, and you know who he is? Guy with the handlebar mustache, like straight out of that. What was that? What was that biker show?
Sons of Anarchy, is it?
Yeah, straight out of the Sons of Anarchy, and he was part of like a Chicago racist biker gang. There's a crazy article like on Rolling Stone where he talks about how he's fine with how he's killed people on the job, and defending another officer who, by all accounts, appears to have executed this suspect in the basement of his home. Just like horrific story, but it just doesn't give you a lot of confidence in police reform.
Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.